Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 picks up about a year after the events of the first one. So if you didn't really watch the first one, there's this pizza chain that's very much Chuck E. Cheese, but, not Chuck E. Cheese, that had a lot of tragedies happen, a lot of kids disappearing and being murdered and things found, and the owner of it all being wrapped up in a lot of controversy. And you have these animatronics that, performed on stage. They end up coming to life and killing people and causing a lot of chaos. And, we pick up after the events of the first one where we've got, Mike and Abby are still trying to deal with life kind of after Freddy's at the end of the last one, where you got reveal of William Afton was behind everything, seemingly killed off because the suit kind of latched into him and kind of took him over, but we didn't really fully see where his body went. You have his daughter, Vanessa, who's still trying to deal with the trauma of everything that her dad had put her through, and, trying to have a life potentially with Mike and Abby and dealing with all the horrors and everything else. But I gotta say, I was hopeful from the trailers that this was going to turn out to be a fun, better horror movie. The first one very much went more of trying to do the lore and going into the darkness of these animatronics. And there's going to be slight spoilers if you don't know stuff about this world and universe that we kind of got to talk about to get into more of the sequel here. But it really revolves around the bodies, the souls, the spirits of these murdered children are possessing these animatronics, and they're doing the bidding of someone. The first one, it's William Afton, and this one you've got a little bit something different because we're going back and we're finding out about Charlotte, a young girl who, was obsessed with this marionette puppet from the original Five Nights at Freddy's location that never appeared anywhere else. And, she ends up being kind of, I think, the first kid who died at Freddy's. And it kind of tries to go through that lore and that story. But I really feel like they dropped the ball on giving us a really fun sequel. Like, I think Five Nights at Freddy fans might get more enjoyment out of the general audience in this, but there's a lot of issues.
Yeah, this film's not without its problems, right? And I want to preface, before I go into anything that I talk about from this from a film perspective, I like the games. I love the Five Nights at Freddy's games. They're a ton of fun. They're like this game franchise that had no business by aesthetic-wise being as successful as it was, found like this really huge grassroots movement popularity from a fan base that really grew over the years. And there's several games in the franchise. There's a ton of lore to dive into. And I gotta say, the one thing that I will give this film credit for is a lot of fan service and paying respect to people who play the games and know the lore and are really into the lore of the games and, everything like that. There's a ton of fan service in this film, but it's fan service in lieu of a cohesive plot and any type of good storytelling. I will say the dialogue in this film is ridiculous. Terrible dialogue in this film. The dialogue is not good. The plot is not good as well. I think we were kind of a little bit sold a bill of goods on it. You put one of the more prominent younger actresses in your trailer, in McKenna Grace, making it seem like she was going to have a little bit of a bigger role in this film than she did. And I think she's in it maybe a total of 5 to 10 minutes, if that.
That was really disappointing.
As far as like that goes. So I was definitely disappointed in that. This film, though, does lean into more of the jump scare element, which is more prevalent in the games if you play the games. The games are very dependent on jump scares. One thing I did appreciate that they did in this film was like one particular scene where you get Josh Hutcherson in the security office, almost kind of going through like you're playing the actual game itself, right? And just like, if you've played the game, you know how you have to, click certain things and look at certain things and activate and shut doors and turn off fence and all that stuff. And I think they did a fine job of that in that scene in particular, but the rest of this film, I gotta say, just was not it for me at all. Like, And like I said, this is coming from somebody who liked the games. I just thought the film was just not good. It just wasn't a good movie. Like, they do some fine things with like the jump scare elements of it, incorporating the aesthetics of the games into the movie. I think they did an okay job at that, but that's kind of where the good stops for this film for me.
Yeah, I was trying to look at it from two angles, from, knowing the game series and knowing that it's a campier, sillier, over-the-top game with a lot of jump scares, and it was made by one guy, but bravo to everything.
Amazing story.
That they were able to do, and they've changed, the game style up multiple times and stuff too. But yeah, they've developed a decent amount of lore, and at the core of Five Nights at Freddy's, there is a really solid horror series you could get out of it. That you've got this dark story of kids being murdered and their souls being put into animatronics and animatronics killing and stuff. And this one just felt like they were trying too hard to be a video game than a movie, because you get the general, like Vanessa knows everything, so she can give secret codes, and she does this and she does that, and it's just everything felt too convenient in this one as well. And you said the jump scares fit the series, like they're a staple of the games, but they're also felt a little lazy and predictable in here. Like I could feel and see every single one of them coming, and they had some creepiness to it. There's a few scenes that definitely had some decent creep factor to it. Yeah. But those jump scares did feel really lazy and predictable on that. And as you said, the dialogue was so rough and bad. My biggest disappointment, and it's really the hard thing that you're trying to do, is that most horror movies don't have a lot of character development. You're not really expecting that. But when this has gone so heavy into the lore with the first one, and it feels like it's going so heavy in the lore with the second one, there's no character development at all. Like, Abby is still the same kid she was in the first one, even though she had gone through something like seeing animatronics kill people and being trapped in something that should be terrifying. She's just still obsessed about getting back to her animatronic friends and all this stuff. And you get a little bit of the Mike that he's trying to process stuff to make a better life for Abby and trying to help Vanessa and stuff, but he's still very kind of one note. He's in the same place. Like I said, Abby's just running off and doing whatever she wants. And Vanessa, she's dealing with the scars and the damage that her dad has done, but really, like, none of them are like maybe 2% different than they were in the first one. Yeah. And I'd almost say it's the same way for the story. You're introducing Charlotte and stuff at the first location, but you're kind of going through the same beats that you did in the first movie as well. So it's a sequel that feels really too much like the original without much difference in there. Like, they do some good fan service, as you said, of more feelings of the games and stuff, and some kind of funny jokes of, as you mentioned, with him going in the office to go through stuff and realizing there's no door and making jokes that there's not being a door. But it's so inconsistent with everything, especially with the animatronics. Like, I'll give it up to the Jim Henson Creature Company. They did a fantastic job with the animatronics. They looked and performed great. But you get them walking around the Five Nights at Freddy's first location very slow and everything else. But there's a good part of the film, and this is a slight spoiler on it, that they're able to escape outside of the confines of Freddy's, and somehow they can travel all around town in a blink of an eye. Yeah, but when you see them, they're just moving just really slow and tiny. And there can be speed ups in the game when they're coming to attack you and everything else, but it's like, you're here. Well, you just left 5 minutes ago from the creature, so you think you probably have a couple hours before they can catch up. But oh nope, they're there.
Yeah, and they're able to move extremely quickly, almost at the speed of the Flash kind of thing. But it's just some of that stuff, that's that little tiny attention to detail that just really kind of pokes at your brain a little bit. That kind of irks me when they get to that point, and it just. Yeah, like, I agree with everything you say there, because it feels like they didn't progress anything. They really didn't. Like you said, Abby is still Abby, even though she had no growth from one to the next, because she's still super obsessed with these, and she's sad that she can't see her friends, but then she goes and defies everything to go see her friends and does all this stuff, and there's just very little movement. Mike's still low-key kind of a little bit of a jerk, and he's still trying his best, and you kind of want to root for him and you kind of don't, and then Vanessa, who, is trying low key to deal with some of the stuff from her family's past, but she can't really escape from it, kind of thing, and she doesn't really grow in that sense. And they just leave things in this weird place. Like, you can see it's going to be a continuous franchise from Blumhouse here, where they very much leave it open for more continuation, more characters. There's more things, put into the story that incorporate the game, which I guess is fine. But I mean, like I said, fan service was good in this. I agree. The animatronics looked incredible in it. They were amazing. But the rest of the stuff for me, is somebody who likes film and likes character development and likes story progression and things like that, we're really left very unsatisfied by it. And that's where I try to disconnect between being a video game fan versus a film fan, where I like the fan service. I was like, oh, that's cool. There's that character that, I remember that character from the games, and I remember how important this one is, and the marionette and stuff like that. That stuff was all good and well and done just fine. It's just the rest of it was just like, ugh. Like, we found ourselves laughing at some of the absurdity, you and I, like, when we went and saw it together, like, more times than I really wanted to out of this film. And that's not the theme that they were necessarily going for in the movies, where they have their little couple chuckle moments, but we were just laughing at more of the absurdly bad stuff than anything else, which isn't the best sign for a film for us, because we both just like put our head down and shook our heads sometimes. And it's
I know you looked over me a few times, and I'm just like, I'm tilting my head to the side, and like, okay, they really just did that.
Yeah, and it's disappointing, because there was potential there to really. You had a good start with the first film. I felt like the first film was fine. The first film was not without its issues too, but you were hoping for more out of the follow-up, and I don't think we got enough of that there, where these characters really move forward anyway, because at the end of the day, Mike's still kind of a jerk, and he, just the whole dynamic between him and Vanessa was just weird in this movie, and it ends in a weird place, and it sets up what I think they were hoping for was a cool element to go at the end. One thing I will give, and I kind of want to turn from that to one of the things I thought they did really well from a character perspective, was that creep factor with the Charlotte possession of other characters and stuff, and some of the visuals looked really good and really well done. I'm like, okay, that's super creepy. That was kind of cool, like when they possess a couple of the characters in the film, and they do a cool job of that. I won't go into any like super spoilery stuff. You can watch it when you see it, but I thought when they got to that point, those were really cool, and I'm like, yes, let's do some more of that and really dive into it. And then they really only do it for like not even like 30 to 40 seconds to a minute.
So quick.
It's just, it's just like, let's just cram a bunch of stuff in here and see what happens. And that was a little disappointing. I'm like, oh, you could have had a couple more minutes and done something really cool with that. And they just kind of missed the mark for me.
Yeah. You don't have to have a ton of depth and craziness to a horror film, especially if it's a horror video game series. But as I said, and you've said, it just feels like they did the same thing they did in the first film and just added a few more jump scares and things like that. It just felt too similar. And we've said this game series has a lot of lore and a lot of darkness, and you could have gone in a really serious way, but also still have that campy humor and stuff to it. But it's just so disappointing for me. Like, Abby did not change in the slightest. She is still the same kid that was running off, doing whatever she wants to do, putting herself in the situations. You've also just got the ability that anybody can enter these restaurants. Like, you have murders of children that have happened in multiple locations, of mysterious deaths and other things happening in this franchises. The buildings are still up. They kind of explain why at least one of them had security. But that's also another huge flaw with this movie, is that they introduce another security guard for the original Five Nights at Freddy's. And it's supposed to play a big importance to the story and the role, but they're in there for 2 minutes. Yeah. There's nothing explained. There's nothing different other than just kind of rehashing things in a slightly different way. Like, it frustrated me that they added something else, but it was like, and we get the reveal towards the end, and it's like, wait, okay, but you did nothing with this.
Big whoop.
You did absolutely nothing with this. It's just it's a film full of frustrations, because there really is a solid, fun horror franchise in Five Nights at Freddy's that can be done. This felt lazy and just kind of like as I said, it feels like they just kind of copied the first one over and made just a couple changes and went on. And as you said, McKenna Grace, you're hyping up that you've got this great starlet coming into this franchise to do stuff with, and barely did anything with her in that. And like I said, they did up the creep factor some. They did up the jump scares and stuff with that, but it just felt like so tacked on. And there's just so many kind of dumb decisions and mistakes that there's one sequence with Vanessa in a car being attacked, and she gets away and moves into another seat, but then she sits there.
Yeah.
Instead of getting out of the car or doing something else, she just sits there. Because again, at least in this film franchise that they've set up, the animatronics move slow. So it'd be very easy to run away and get away from these things, but yet somehow they're always still getting trapped. Like, you needed to bring in more of that creep factor that they can speed up to come after you, or they can do this or that. But it just feels like there are so many wrong decisions made all across. Like, the bones are there for something decent, and it's trying to look at it as, all right, it's a teen horror film. I can't want or expect too much out of a story or anything like that. But when they basically gave you the first film again, it's disappointing.
Yeah, with a little fun flair thrown in from the actual games that made it feel a little bit more like the game. And if that was their aim, success. But I feel like we were even given a little bit more of a bait and switch, like not just with McKenna Grace, but you talk about throwing Skeet Ulrich in there and Matthew Lillard returning. Obviously, both were known from one of the more popular late 20th century, early 21st century film franchises in Scream. This is putting them together in the same movie for the first time really since that. And you get Skeet Ulrich in the film for one scene, and that's it. Just kind of a throwaway to kind of move the story forward a little bit, and kind of like
with a video game type of plot hole.
100%. And it was so frustrating. I'm like, really? That's all we're getting from this guy? That's all he's gonna be in this? Is this? And Matthew Lillard, who I love and is just like a notoriously just great guy, and had such an amazing moment in the first film. Just kind of has this little cheesy dream type and I'm gonna spoil that just a little bit. There's a little bit of like this dream-ish sequence with Vanessa, and tries to be creepy, but it doesn't really hit the mark necessarily. And I don't know. There was just, it felt like we were a little bit baited on that too. I'm like, oh, what role are these guys gonna play? And we both made kind of like a Scream-esque type joke for like what they could do for Five Nights at Freddy's 3, and just do something absolutely ridiculous like that. And that's not something I think they were hoping for from this, but it really just felt like we were kind of sold a bill of goods on this. And I gotta say, as popular as Blumhouse has been, man, they've had a few misses this year for me that are really kind of putting them, in my opinion, on a bit of a downward trajectory as far as the quality of films that they've put out here recently. And that's kind of a bummer to see, because like you said, the nuts and bolts are there for something really cool and really special that I really feel like they didn't put as much of an effort into moving characters and story forward as much as they could have, instead of just doing a bunch of extra fan service for fans of the game, which was cool, because I know there were people that came out of it like super excited. If you're a fan of the games and just the games, and you only care about the games being incorporated into the movie, like the gaming elements, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of that. But if you're looking for just that to marry well with a really high quality film, I don't think you're gonna be completely satisfied coming out of this, and that's disappointing.
Yeah, exactly. I think the hardcore fans of FNAF is going to have probably a better time with this than everybody else, because if you're not worried about plot or story or anything like that, and you're just getting to see the characters that you enjoy, being around in there. But there's just so much convenience of stuff and such odd decisions, especially like you had Wayne Knight as a science teacher, who is just straight out of the gate a bully to Abby.
He's terrible.
An absolute jerk. Only wants the best of the best for his science fair, and gives Abby no shot at all ever with and again, this is a spoiler, she shows up with one of the animatronics, and he's still an absolute jerk of like, oh, you brought somebody in a suit, like, get out of my face and get out of here, and all that. And it was just such I love Wayne Knight. He's been such iconic in Seinfeld and Jurassic Park and so many different roles that he's done throughout the year, and I was waiting to just have a spitter come out and
just get
take
him again.
Care of him or something.
Get him again. We both made that.
I was waiting for just because of how they've done things. I was waiting for Jurassic Park moment to happen within here and stuff, but it was just, it was just so rough. Like I said, the jump scares just felt cheap and lazy for a bit. Like, you saw everything coming.
Yeah, no surprises.
It tries to do creepiness, and it gets a few decently creepy moments. But it's more frustrating because you feel like, well, you're almost there. And
right
then
on the cusp
you
of it.
just miss the mark on everything. And there's also some really silliness over to it, too. Like, I know the game franchise can be very campy and silly, but it gets really silly in parts of it as well. And it just feels like a retread of the first one with barely a change. Like you said, you're bringing in Charlotte as kind of being the main thing. And that marionette that it was creepy.
Yeah.
But the lore behind of like what kept it at bay and what can do it, and even the possessions, like, you're not really diving in, well, how are these possessions possible? You're not really getting that deeper dive into anything other than, like, you try to establish Mike and Vanessa's having a relationship, but you don't know if it's a friend, you don't know if it's romantic, because it never really gets
off the ground.
It never gets off the ground, and he refuses to listen to her, doesn't want to do anything. You've just been through something traumatic. It's been a year, even though you're trying to deal with it. Like, you're still treating Abby like, oh, yeah, we just had these murderous things happening, and so many kids have died in our town and everything. All right, I'm just going to leave you alone and let you go around town on your own and not keep you away and hide secrets and do it. Just, the plot was just bad. Like, overall, it was just bad. Like, there's good bones there.
Yeah.
They just failed to really capitalize on anything new and interesting. The trailer made it look a lot better and more interesting than it really turned out to be, and that is disappointing. Like, I'm trying to separate between looking at it as just a campy horror film and then looking at something, because it really is trying hard to establish lore and establish a deep and intriguing story. And I just can't ignore that they just failed on doing anything else new and different with it.
Yeah, and in the end of the day, that's just disappointing. But Five Nights at Freddy's 2, unfortunately for me, is very much a miss. You have elements of the game incorporated into the film that were done well, but it missed so much of the point of moving any type of progression in the story forward in a meaningful way that really didn't capture me and captivate me like I was hoping. You get some incorporations, more of jump scares into this, which, if you're a fan of jump scares, you're not going to be wowed by any of these, but they're more incorporated into it as well. But we can't ignore so many of the plot holes and the conveniences and some of the things and just overall bad dialogue in this film. Props to the animatronics team that were putting the animatronics together. Those things looked incredible, and the elements of the game were incorporated fun ways, but just not enough meat on the story moving forward for this to be a real palatable film for me. I'm giving this score a 5.5 out of 10. Mainly for the beautifulness of the animatronics and just find the ways they found to cleverly incorporate the gaming elements into the story. But outside of that, it was just a huge miss for me and a real disappointment.
Yeah, if you're a hardcore fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, you probably will get more enjoyment out of this than, especially if you're a younger hardcore fan of it. But those who are looking for that plot development and to get that story going more, it doesn't really advance anything. Like, we get a setup for a third. We get a few more elements to it, but it definitely feels like a rehash of what we already saw in the first one with just, all right, let's change A, let's change C, let's change F, and then we'll call it a movie. Like, it didn't do enough for the story, for the plot. There's no character development. The jump scares feel lazy and predictable, and anything new they try to do, they just kind of threw it out there and then threw it to the side. I'm giving it a 4, and I still feel like, to me, that's being very generous for it, because I think there are bones that are good to Five Nights at Freddy. Like, it has a very creepy, solid kind of lore of William Afton and the kids and the spiritual possessions and the killer animatronics. And as you said, the Jim Henson Creature Company did a fantastic job with the creatures. They were the highlight, the best thing, just because of how they looked and, how realistic they moved and everything else, doing very practical effects. But the story just failed in almost every way that it could. The dialogue was bad. The acting was off and rough, and just nothing felt together in this film. So yeah, 4 is where I ended on it, because I ended up feeling bored towards the end. Like, I was just I wasn't scared. I wasn't getting any story progression. I didn't really have any characters I was rooting for in this film. Like everything just made me feel like, okay, why am I here watching this?
Yeah, even the climax of the film was very anticlimactic. Like by the time you get to the last sequence with the animatronics and stuff, like it wasn't that well done. I kind of agree with that. I think 5.5 is still pretty generous in my opinion, and it's just probably me giving it a little bit of more respect for throwing the gaming elements into it. But you giving it a 4 puts it in Madam Web territory for you, which is very harsh. Like that's kind of on the harsh way, but I can see why you got there and like why you really did, because we really wanted for this to be so well done. And I'm seeing people give this like a rating way higher than what we're giving it, and that could speak to more of the hardcore younger FNAF fan base in that, but I can't get there, man. I can't get to that high of a score for it because there's so much more wrong with this film that really drags down what could have been done. Had they made that, movement forward a little bit and gave their characters some more development and tidied up things a little bit more there, I probably would have been a little more generous with this film. But the fact that there was just none, and you have, Abby is still is this whiny young girl that doesn't really grow in any way, shape, or form in this film. Yeah. She doesn't really get any resolution for her, her attachment to these spirits and everything like that. It's very one note, and it's a little disappointing. And, with Vanessa and Mike, their characters don't really develop any either. It's really hard to give it that much higher of a score than what we gave it. So, it's definitely an interesting case study, because I think you're going to have very wildly swaying one way or another grades on this. Mm-hmm. I did happen to check the Rotten Tomatoes score of this after we had seen it, because I'm notorious for not looking at anything review-wise for a film before we go and see it, just to get my own no bias one way or another perspective on a film before we can. And I could see why it's being hit as hard as it is on the Rotten Tomatoes score, even lower than what we're giving it. Like, I think even we're being more generous than a lot of people are that have been seeing it. But I have seen friends that have seen it before we got to see it. Even we're always just like, "Oh, it's great! You're gonna love it, and you're gonna do this." And it just very much wasn't the case. And I'm gonna go ahead and say sorry to my friend Lance, who I know absolutely loved the film. But we're gonna have a lot to talk about this when I see you at work and talk about this, because this film just was not it for me.
Yes, it seems like between the critic score, they're breaking down plot and story and visuals and kind of what makes a core of a film work, while a lot of the audience scores has been higher is just about pure fandom. It's about, well, you gave me Freddy Fazbear and you gave me Chica and you gave me all these characters I enjoy, and I got to see them do horror and stuff. But it's also one that it's PG-13 and it's trying to give you horror, but in a safe way. You're not really seeing violence, you're not seeing the murders, everything is kind of like off camera for most of it. You see some of the attacks happen, but when it comes to the point of like, well, we're going to finish off a character or something else, it all happens like off screen. So
which, when done well, can work. Because it doesn't have to be in your face and visual. There's ways to have implied horror that can work really well that I just don't think they did well in this either.
Yeah, I just don't think anything they really tried to do. Like, I enjoy the games. I've played them. I've watched, videos of streamers and other people play them, and the enjoyment it can get out of it. As I said, it's most disappointing for me because I feel like there is a good horror franchise that can be done with Five Nights at Freddy with this dark storyline, and that you can give some really good horror elements. But when it feels like it's trying to focus more on the lore than the horror, but it's just so lazy with how it handled the lore in here, then that's why it got such low marks, because it just threw stuff in that really didn't matter. And because there's one character in particular they threw in that you're supposed to feel dramatic and everything else, and it's like, why should I care? Because you set nothing up with them. You did nothing for them. And like you said, if it had some character development and it had some plot development that felt different than the first one, I would have given this a lot, higher score. But as you said, it has felt like Blumhouse has really kind of dropped the ball on sequels lately. Megan 2.0 was an absolute mess.
Yeah, and that's what I was inferring from that too, yeah.
The Black Phone 2 was a very mixed reaction from a lot of people. It felt like the second one went in a similar but very different, almost Freddy type of nature with that. And people are, but it feels like they've really struggled to find what they want with sequels. Megan 2.0 tried to do the Terminator 2 route, and it did not work at all. And this one just felt like it tried to just redo what it did in the first one with barely changing anything, which it just felt like a copy and paste type of a sequel that it didn't really give us anything new or interesting. We got, what, 2 new animatronics overall? You got different versions of the animatronics in there.
Yeah, I think they introduced 3 new characters from the games in this that weren't in the first one, and 2 of them were in there very, very briefly.
But I will say there are some Easter eggs if you look in the corners of things, like when he's in the office and look around. There's some things that you can find in there, which was a neat touch.
Yes.
There are also 2 credit scenes. One is a scene, the other is just audio, but I cringed at the extra credit scene. I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to spoil it, but I cringed at the second one because they tried to establish something early on in the movie about what happened at the end of Five Nights at Freddy 1, and then this 2-minute credit scene just threw everything out that they tried to establish with that, and it was just so silly. Cringy and silly, and just, I know that they're trying to set up for that to be part of 3, but you just threw away anything that you tried to set up with
I want to peel back the curtain just a little bit, because by the time the movie ends, we don't even look to see if there's end credits most of the times, but when we got to the end, we're like, do we really need to stick through the credits? Because we were both kind of over it at that point, but we saw that you were like, there's at least one mid-credit scene. I didn't see if there was an end one. By the time the mid one was done, I was like, apparently there's an end credit scene, and when we got it, and it was just audio, and you looked at me with the most disappointed look on your face, and you were like, that was it.
I mean, it's for the lore and the game fans. It's fun.
Yeah.
But just to sit through something that was already not that enjoyable, to have that kind of be the closing thing was like, okay, let's go.
It's just one of those, like, you got up so quick to get out of the. I was like, same, buddy, same.
I'm done.
I totally got it.
But Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is in theaters right now. If you're a fan of the series, go check it out. Form your own opinion. See what you like about it. This one is definitely going to be polarizing because it's really going to depend on what you're wanting to get out of this film. If you're just wanting game stuff, you're wanting Freddy and the animatronic characters that you love, and you don't care about character development and plot development and other stuff like that, you can have a fun time with it. But if you want some sort of development and story and better horror, you're not really getting it with this. But go check it out, form your own opinion, because this one is definitely going to be polarizing, and you could really enjoy it, and great that you do. Like, we're not putting down if anybody enjoys something that we don't like. It just had too many issues to really look past when we're trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. It just had so many issues. But make sure you see it, whether you go in theaters to see it or you watch it at home if you were on the fence about it, because you could end up enjoying it. I think there just has to be some lower expectations.
I got a feeling our comment section for this is going to be very interesting, because you have that hardcore fan base, and I know they're wanting to hear people just rave about this film, and we're going to be the little engine that just kind of crapped all over their movie. But this is going to be interesting to see how people respond to this review in particular, because you're going to be on one side of the fence or the other about this, and I'm really interested to have those conversations. Yeah, please come. If you go see that film and you have a completely different take on it, if you think we're way off base, we don't mind hearing about it. We take negative criticism as well as we do positive, so if you agree with us, awesome. Let's talk about it too. But if you disagree with us, let us know what you enjoyed. What did we miss the mark on? Because, we're just 2 guys here talking about movies, man. We're just, we have our opinions. Go see it and form your own. Don't take ours as the gospel. You might have a better time of it than we did. But yeah, it was definitely a big disappointment on this one.
Yeah, like, I really wanted to watch it, like, getting the trailers. And, they said they listened to feedback of fans because the first Five Nights at Freddy had barely any horror aspects to it. Like, you got the dark creepiness. Yeah. But not a lot of horror. You didn't get a whole lot with it other than having the machines coming down towards faces and the animatronics being creepy, but it was really light on the horror, and fans spoke out like, hey, we need more horror, and they threw in a bunch of jump scares, but I wanted it to be so much better, but that's not where my review, that it didn't live up to my expectations. It was just, it it just didn't do anything new or fun or interesting that it could have done. And it's disappointing because there is great lore and a great story that can be done in horror. Like, horror can have good story and have good characters and plot progression and everything else. And this just missed so many beats and so many marks. And it was disappointing.
Yeah, for sure. To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.